Hello, everybody. My guest today is a successful founder and managing director of an offshore bookkeeping and accountancy leasing business based in Philippines. He knows a thing or two about how to bring significant value to the table, and he is passionate about helping small and medium business owners achieve the financial goals, improve experience and skills so they can take their rightful place on the global market. Please welcome to the show, Scott Trevethan.
Thank you, Viv. Lovely to be here.
Great to have you here, Scott. I hope I said your surname right.
Many different ways. It's from Cornwall originally, Trevethan, whatever you want to. I don't really mind.
Awesome. Now, how's your morning been so far?
It's been great. Up as I do at least 6 times a week. Up at 5:25 and done half an hour of exercise. Feel great. So.
Excellent. You know what? I originally set up this time, 8 a.m. as a window available for people to book for the show, because of the international, time zones, obviously, right? People, I've got some guests from US, some guests from Europe, and I thought, well, I'm just going to set up, 8 a.m. I'm going to set up 5 p.m. 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. for my Saturdays. Wouldn't have crossed my mind that it would be somebody over here on, was from Australia, just like me, booking in for 8 a.m. But
like a mate of mine says, it's great to get up and get a good look at the day. So
yeah, absolutely, gets the day going,
yeah.
And actually, I find, in the mornings when your brain, is fresh and you can get more done. So I'm sure we can have some interesting conversation for the next hour or so.
Absolutely.
So tell me, obviously, you've done many things over your career, from, working for a tobacco company to trying to open up your cafe to now, being an owner and operator of a large offshore accountancy business. What is one thing that you come across through those years as a commonality in business? Because, these are 3 different type of businesses, right?
Yep. I guess a big commonality in any type of business is the ability to add value. And I think a lot of people forget about that. That's what you need to do to create a successful business. No matter what you're doing, whether you're selling things or selling services, you have to make sure that you're giving value to your target market. Otherwise, they're just not going to buy it.
Mm.
And I guess the other thing is that you need to tell the world about it as well. So you need to have a good strategy. It doesn't, you have the best product or the best service. If you're not telling anyone about it, then very, very difficult to get the sort of traction and scalability that you need to run a successful business, for sure.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about that coffee shop that you had.
Okay. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. That was like a bit of a unique concept, right? You're trying to bring on the market. Can you tell me a bit and tell the listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was my, I've been an accountant all my career, but this was my, I think journalists often say that they want to leave the newspaper job, or they don't have a job anymore, but and write the great novel. Well, accountants want to always, leave the accounting profession and start a business. And this was my sort of life change. And I thought, right, I'm going to start a concept cafe. I'm going to franchise it all around Australia and the world. It's going to be called Wrap City Cafe, and it's going to specialize in flour tortilla wraps, awesome coffee and breakfasts, but there's gourmet fillings and, do really well. And it's a cafe, so how hard can it be, right?
Yeah.
I went into Hawthorne in Melbourne in Glenferrie Road in a good busy spot. Got an ex-cafe and retrofitted it out and got a chef in and did a whole bunch of stuff, and then found quickly that the life of a cafe owner was 7 days a week, very, very hard work and often very demoralizing when you're sitting there. I think the worst day I had was I think I did about $200 for the whole day, and just no one was coming in the cafe. It was very, very soul destroying as well. But we tried a lot I tried to take on my experience in branding and, get some great concepts through and but just putting it all together in the right spot was very, very difficult. And I noticed I was two doors down from a franchise chain called Pure and Fresh, and they were a large multinational franchise chain. And I noticed about 3 or 4 years after I decided that that was an experiment, this was an experiment that wasn't going to work,
Yeah.
they closed too. There's no guarantees in the hospitality industry, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, hospitality industry is a tough one. I mean, I was listening to another podcast the other day about restaurants in America, and a lot of them apparently only make around 4% profit margin,
Yeah.
or even less. So it's a tough one, and when you have such a variable overheads with your perishables and staffing costs, yeah, that's a definitely a tough type of business.
It was something that really coloured me and my thinking, because as an accountant, I knew exactly where my margins were, and I knew I could calculate, what I was earning per hour based on the profitability of the business and the amount of effort that I was putting through. The vast majority of people who are running small businesses have no idea. And when I went into my greengrocer, who was just a few doors down, and we used to have a lovely old bloke, and we sort of were discussing things, and I said, geez, I'm not too happy. I'm probably only making about $20 an hour. And he said, that's good money. That's something that we should, you should be proud of that. And I'm like, no, it's not something I'm proud of. It doesn't, justify the return on investment at all. But there it was. People just didn't understand what their true value was, the value that they were giving communities and the consumers in general.
Mm.
And therefore, it was just really a tough industry to be in, because everyone was racing down to the bottom with prices and margins. And I guess most cafes were, and they still are, lifestyle businesses.
Yeah. Now, what are some of the other businesses that you as been an accountant for years, you've had many clients from many different industries, right? What are some of the other typical industries that see this similar, problem with, low profit margins, not very successful as a general rule?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a broad range of people and industries will have that low profit margin. Anything in retail, generally, they might say, I'm going to have a 50% or 100% markup on whatever my goods that I'm selling are. But then when they take everything else into consideration, they're really, you need some good turnover in order to make the sort of margins that you really need to justify the investment.
Mm.
So a lot of retail really, really struggle along those lines. And that's why online is doing so well, because you don't have the overhead that the bricks and mortar stores have. Everything to do with hospitality has always been a really hard gig to try, and especially if you're trying to do it legally. So, and when I say legally, I mean pay all your staff the correct amounts and above board. And I feel really bad for the people like George Cohen-Burris, who, and I'm not saying George was completely guilt-free about what happened with his restaurant chains, but
Who's George?
they were. So George was one of the master chef guys who had a very big restaurant empire in Melbourne.
Oh, okay.
And was found to be underpaying his staff massively. So they had to pay back $7 million or so in underpayments. Same things that's happened at 7-Eleven, and same things that's happened to Super Group and a bunch of other big companies that have just sort of fallen foul of the sometimes complex labour laws. But most hospitality, chefs apparently won't work unless you pay them cash, or at least some part cash. And that's a very broad generalisation, but it makes it very difficult for the owners if the chefs can then go back down the track and ask you to pay them properly what you didn't pay them. So that's always there's complicated issues there, but they just, if you don't cut those corners, then it's very, very difficult to make ends meet in the hospitality game. So I'd say that's hospitality and retail are the two key areas that really underperform.
And it's not just a matter of having a great branding, right? I mean, look at example like Jamie Oliver's. He's famous chef and he got a big following. But I know his restaurant in Canberra here shut down, like I think beginning of last year.
We've seen that in our Crown Casino here in Melbourne. We've seen a succession of big names come in, big name chefs have come in, and obviously they just lend their name to the restaurant, whatever it is that they open up, and then fail. It's just so, unless you can afford to have those super high prices for your meals, then it's just too hard to keep the quality up and to pay the staff what you need to pay them, and with all the overheads, and you're so much subject to the vagaries of what's happening in the economy. When I was running the cafe, I used to notice if the evening before there was some doom and gloom about the All Ordinaries, I knew that people weren't going to be coming to get a lot of their breakfasts with us. So they would just say, no, okay, there's a bit of doom and gloom in the economy. I'll make my own breakfast, or I'll skip a coffee, or I'll make my own lunch. So our turnover was dramatically affected by the all odds the night before. Quite amazing, just the way that it had the effect on the psychology of your consumers. So I think that's the other thing that it really impacts the hospitality industry.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, because that's the first thing that you know, as a consumer, that's the first thing you try to cut down, the easy things, right? That are not really a necessity for your life. Like if it comes down to making a scrambled eggs at home to save a couple of bucks because the economy. And this is why often I like to see certain cafes when they have a specials on. I think it's a good thing, you know, like when you have those bacon and egg rolls and a coffee bundle, like that's like on a special. I think that's something that, you know, coffee shops should have, because it's a takeaway and it's something that it's cheap and people will come back for, even at those times.
Quick and convenience is the key, isn't it? So you don't want to get a bacon and egg roll and a coffee and then sit down and read the newspaper for half an hour. You just want to grab and go, and that's where that's coming from. But when I walk around, I get to see Sydney sometimes. I haven't been there, obviously, because of Corona lockdown, also, but and Melbourne CBD, and the race to the bottom. You know, you can get those sort of deals, a coffee and an egg and bacon roll for, you know, $9, $8. It's a crazily cheap prices, and you think, wow, how can they make any money on those? Sure, there's volume, but there's so many cafes that are competing for that market. It sort of just means that, you know, no one's making very good money on it. But it's okay if you can if that attracts people in, and then you can sell them the $20 breakfast. But
that's exactly that's the angle I was coming from when I'm seeing, you know, good coffee shops doing it well, when it's a good intro offer. I mean, in any good business, you should have an intro offer or low burger offer, gets them in, and if you do it well, then they're more likely to come and actually have a proper breakfast. And vice versa, those that do enjoy having a proper breakfast, they wouldn't buy that better bacon and, you know, egg roll, whatever.
Absolutely.
So back to you, Scott. What inspired you to, you know, fiddle with numbers as a career?
The lack of the ability to do anything else, to be honest. So when I was going through to VCE, or HSC as it was back then, I wanted to be a photographer. I thought that I had some good artistic chops, and that being a photographer, and I wanted to study photography in RMIT. Sadly, no matter how I'd morphed the direction of my career, always flew back to, you know, what's natural and what's easy for you. And I guess the accounting side of things came very naturally to me, came easy to me, the understanding of those concepts and how to fit together. And no matter how hard I tried, it just pulled me back in. So that was pretty much why I do accounting, and because it's what I'm naturally good at. I guess that's the simple answer. I'd love to be an artist, but, you know, I'd love to be a singer, but I can't sing. So
they say chefs are artists as well. So if you like cooking, you know, you can be an artist in the kitchen.
I can't cook either. I'm learning how to cook now, but and it's not something that I've got a great passion for, to be honest.
That's all right. Everybody's got their own passion, and it's important. I mean, if we all had the same passion, I mean, the world wouldn't be very diverse, so it'd be pretty boring for the same thing. Now, what is your success story as a business owner? Obviously, you've been on your game for a while. So where are you now with what you do?
Um, what do you mean? Where am I?
Well, you've got the offshore accountancy business. You also got a firm, accounting firm in Melbourne, right?
No, so let me just tell you a bit about the anthology of Go Global. So currently I run a business called Go Global Bookkeeping, and we have 70 accountants at the moment and climbing, um, who are either employed full time by Australian accountants or Australian bookkeepers or Australian businesses, and we also do bookkeeping services for small and medium-sized businesses as well. So we're sort of providing that bookkeeping service and then a staff leasing, just focusing on the accounting. We're everything to do with accountants. We're all accountants. We love accounting. We love the value that we can add to the world through accounting, and that's the reason for being for that business. But we started that business, or I started that business out of my accounting firm, which I wanted to use offshore labour, and I heard about the Philippines as a great place to find really, really talented people. So I went over there and visited, fell in love with the place, not fell in love with the spirit of the place, not the actual place. I mean, it's kind of a dump. It's very crowded and polluted and very and hot and messy. But that said, the people there were great and the skills that they can bring are fantastic. So started offshoring. We built up a team of about 8 with my accounting firm. So I had an accounting firm here in Melbourne. Sold that over the last couple of years just to focus on what I call my passion project, which is Go Global Bookkeeping, because that's where my heart really was. I guess I lost interest in doing the tax returns and really love the whole entrepreneurial spirit of creating something and as I say, adding value to a broad range of businesses, not just in Australia, but also in New Zealand and soon to be the US as well. So it's very exciting.
And it's something that's allowing you to make a bigger impact, right? Because it's much more scalable.
Yeah, that's right. And as an accountant, I used to suffer from this because I want to add value to the world. But when I'd see clients, especially the small business clients, and they would come to me around about February or March of the year after the 30th of June. So, we're talking about 7, 8 months later, and then they're giving me their books and they just want me to do the tax return work as quickly as possible. They're not interested in their results, really, just interested in how much tax that they need to pay in respect of that period. And
Mm.
it's incredibly difficult to add value, and you feel like you're just working for the tax office with those guys. And it's like, well, really, what we need to be doing is giving you proactive advice. We need to be making sure that your numbers are right the whole time. And that's why I fell in love with the before stage, which is the bookkeeping side, to make sure that they've got the numbers when they need them, when they need to decide whether to hire someone or to fire someone, whether to buy a new machine or to keep the machine that they've got, or even to buy a new vehicle. It shouldn't be a tax-driven question, but that's certainly what the whole accounting industry is started to look like post GFC. Really, before that it was not too bad, but then post GFC things changed, and people were just interested in accountants doing their end of year accounts and their tax returns as quickly and cheaply as possible. And I just didn't see that added enough value.
I think a lot of businesses are not taking enough of that proactive approach, looking at their numbers and what the numbers really represent, right? What are some key indicators people should look at?
Well, certainly, I mean, we were talking about margin before, and I think that's definitely a key one. When you look at saying, well, how much sales am I making? Everyone knows that. That's something that you live on, or how much revenue that I've got. But to try and put all the costs associated with selling that particular revenue or service is very, very important, because that'll tell you the margin that you earn on your product. And then that tells you how much, if you know how much overhead you're actually spending, whether it's rent or whether it's admin staff or whatever the other plethora of overheads that you have on your business, what your break-even point is, and how much profit that you need to make. So then you want to look at things like return on investment. So how much funds have I actually had to put into the business, whether I bought it or whether it's assets that I need to, or that is things or machines or equipment, or even security bonds for your rental, your lease, your premises. how, I put in a fair bit of money, including working capital. How much do I need to earn on that money and my own time in order to make this whole thing worthwhile? So, and they're the sort of numbers that are very easy to calculate, and they're very easy to continue to see how they're trending over a year. They're not much good if you're telling them 8 or 12 months after the event, because
Yeah.
people will always, small business owners will always say, oh yeah, that's how it used to be, but things have changed now. Um, uh, so yeah, I think you need to do them a lot more regularly, but you can only do that if you've got all the numbers in your accounts at the right time. And
And there,
technology's really allowed us to do that. So
and there are many different examples for the outcome, right? You might be somebody, listening right now to the show who is looking into starting a business to sell a business. Not everybody starts a business to keep a business, right? You might want to start a business,
well,
package it up, and be able to sell it, right? So
there really needs to be, I mean, really classically, you should never ever start a business without having an exit point to it. But no one really does. It's like trying to say, yeah, I've got an exit point for my marriage. I'm gonna marry someone, and we'll be married for X number of years, and then we'll get out of that marriage. No one starts a business thinking that it's going to end, but all businesses do end, or they morph and they change into something else. So no matter how good the business is, you always should have an exit point. I wish more business owners would have that view of, okay, I just need to maximize the value of this business so that when I sell it in X years' time, that I'll get a great return on all of my efforts.
right. So, and also, there's nothing wrong with thinking about it as a that being a temporary thing for a couple of years, right? Because, like you said, you might enter a business, you start a business, it's profitable in that current climate over those years. And when it starts to decline, it's time to sell it or get rid of it and do something new that's more emerging in those times, in those newer times, right?
Absolutely. And I guess definitely right, that there's two things that are happening right now, that are trending right now, that would be an exception to that rule. And the first one is the lifestyle business. So we're starting to see, and I think it's the millennials or Gen Zs, or that don't want the same things as I'm a Gen Xer. My kids think I'm a baby boomer, but that's not true. We're the forgotten generation. But the baby boomers and the Gen Xers have a certain worldview that the later generations don't necessarily have. We're starting to see this trend now of lifestyle businesses where people don't really have an outcome in mind. They want to live life every day. They want to enjoy. They want to make enough money to enjoy their lifestyle. They want to work when they want to work. And they don't really mind that they're not creating value at the end, because they're getting value now. Probably, which is okay as long as you've got your investments and superannuation and you've got a fallback plan. And the second point is the gig economy, and we're going to hear this much more over the next year, probably as we come out of the isolation and trying to look at the world economies and where they are. The gig economy was already something that was really gathering pace, and that's just where you don't really have a job. You don't really work for anyone. You're a freelancer. You're a gun for hire, and you work doing whatever. If you work from home in front of your computer, you're doing whatever you're doing, and it could be for anyone in the world that you're doing it for. So again, in those people, it's very much, they might not be doing that for lifestyle. It's just, well, I need to earn X amount, so I'm not going to create a business that employs staff. I'm just going to be a freelance person who does one job, and then if I want to take the day off, I can take the day off. So it's kind of lifestyle, but I think it's becoming an economic necessity for much of the world to be able to do that.
Yeah, and with that gig economy, you're talking about things like Fiverr, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fiverr and Upwork, but it's extending everywhere now that you see. And I guess Fiverr is a great example of a great platform that everyone in the world competes. And I guess you've got to then understand that if I could be a great graphic designer, which is one of the sort of typical gig economy type, or a copywriter, I could be really good at that. But I'm competing with someone else who's really good and experienced to that in South America, or in the Philippines, or in India, or in the UK. So not everyone's got the same lifestyle expectations or cost of living. And so whereas I wouldn't be prepared to take $5 an hour to apply my craft, a lot of people in the world will. So that's why it's a difficult thing for those people to do. But I think that, and I know I'm sort of jumping around a bit, but this, back in my British American, in my tobacco company days, that really formed this understanding that big companies exist for the benefit of the shareholders. And they expect absolute loyalty, blood, sweat, and tears from their employees. And that's really the only way that you can progress through a large company. But they exist for their shareholders. So that kind of means if there's any sort of economic shock or any merger or anything like that, it doesn't matter how loyal or how much blood, sweat, and tears you've given your organization, you can be gone, you can be finished, you can be done. And we've seen this in the current corona crisis. In the when things shut down, and we were very fortunate in Australia to have programs like JobKeeper that meant that the big companies didn't need to shed the thousands of people that they ordinarily would have. But in the Philippines, that wasn't the case. They don't have that same sort of thing. So we saw really big companies, the Telstras, the Australian companies, the Telstras, the Qantas's, the banks that are all employ thousands and thousands of people in the Philippines. Overnight, they just cut their services and said, "You're all done. Sorry, go home. There's no work for you." And those people, there's millions of Filipinos now that are out of work, which is quite frustrating for everyone because their call centers, I don't know if you've tried to ring Telstra or any other call center, but their service capabilities are right down because their call centers are just non-existent because they've got rid of all of their staff. So ultimately, I think the gig economy and lifestyle businesses are okay when the economy is doing really well and gives you that lifestyle choice. And you don't want to sell your soul. I certainly wouldn't want to sell my soul to a big corporation, although that can be, there's no such thing as job security, but as long as you understand that you're working for yourself and improving your own skill set, making yourself more employable, I'm very much happy that I'm running my own business.
Being successful running businesses is great, but in order to do that, you need to be able to, perform certain ways. So it comes back to, your physical well-being, your mental well-being. So Scott, how do you look after yourself? How do you keep fit?
I'm the sort of person, Vit, that needs to have some sort of crazy goal in mind, or I have been typically doing that. So back in the late 90s, I got into marathon running. And when I say got into marathon running, I've run one marathon, so that means I'm a marathon runner.
Yep.
In fact, I ran the inaugural Sydney Marathon, which was a trial event to see if you could get in the Olympics. And I just missed out by about an hour and 5 minutes of an Olympic spot, but very happy to have done that Sydney course. And that kind of probably wasn't for me. I'm a bigger bloke. So I've done lots of other bits and pieces. I think physical fitness has always been very, very important for me to get the most out of my body, to get from a number of different directions. So I know that if I drink too much alcohol, if I don't eat properly, then I put on a lot of weight and I don't feel good with myself. And I've always had very sedentary jobs. And I think sitting in front of the computer for 8-10 hours a day is not the most healthiest of lifestyles. I think the stats are coming out saying that it's the new sitting is the new smoking, or it's the new, causing cancers and all sorts of problems. So very mindful of that now, making sure that I eat properly, making sure that I get enough exercise. And at the moment, it's been really difficult because of the gyms being closed. So I've got myself a set of bands that I now work out with, and but I am looking forward to maybe even the social interaction. Not that there's that much early in the morning. Of going to the gym again when they open up, hopefully in a couple of weeks in Melbourne.
Now, a typical thing that people come across as a bit of a roadblock on the way to start exercising is their motivation, right? Do you exercise only when you're motivated, Scott?
No, I have what's called a habit-based lifestyle now. So this was something that was introduced to me from a group that I'm part of in the US called Wake Up Warrior. And it was very much built around, and I think it's quite a popular philosophy at the moment, in terms of things like making your bed and doing certain things just by habit every morning. So I certainly live my life that way. My bed is made right now, and I've done my exercise for the morning, because it sort of takes that motivation away from you, because motivation is good sometimes and it's not good other times. But if you know that you just do something out of habit, then it just gets done. So to me, it doesn't matter whether I'm training for something specific now or whether I'm just doing what I do because of habit. At least if I can be consistent about what I do, then I know that I'll get the body results that I need.
Excellent. Well, that's what you just said. I'm very happy what you just said, because this is exactly the philosophy that I have and that I see as a successful way to approach bringing on regular, healthy, active lifestyle. I've been in this for 10 years, and the word motivation has been thrown around a lot. But like you said, the habit-based focus is what is not just the current trend, but it does work. There's also an interesting study about it from the university on Gold Coast about the habits, power of habits, where they've split the groups in and two. I think they had 100 applicants for a study, and they were studying. They were giving them a simple task of implementing one new habit each week, and at the end of the study, those participants in both groups, the first group was adding on a new habit, the other one was replacing a bad habit with a new habit, sort of similar thing. And both have been able to achieve weight loss, achieve an improvement in their fitness. But what was interesting is when the study finished, after the 6 months, the study was 6 months long. After it finished, they came back to all the participants 12 months later. They've seen that they've maintained their result. They've maintained, and some even continued on improving. And it just goes to say how habits are really powerful, because when you do implement them, it becomes something that's repetitive and becomes part of what you do day by day, and it's not associated with how you feel emotionally, how you're motivated. Neither of those things. It's literally like you're brushing your teeth or you're making up your bed, like you said.
And I think where people sometimes fall down in habits, I don't know what you've seen, but is that you can't create a habit overnight, and that because it's called a habit because it's something that you just do almost instinctively, and it does take some time to really ingrain those habits. So it's got to be very deliberate at the start, and then it just becomes something that you do. So
yep, absolutely.
Like for me, exercise every day is a mandatory, and it's something that I considered as a mandatory, and it might just be a 30-minute walk, or it might be something a bit more intense. Hopefully I've got a good balance, but that's why we need people like yourself who can guide us in what the way to get the best out of that. But I've got to do some sort of physical activity every single day, the same way that I've got to make my bed and clean the kitchen before I start work, and do a few other things. In fact, I've got 12 things that I currently track as what I call sacred habits that I try to do every single day.
Yeah. What are those?
And they're vastly varied, because this is part of our Lifebook program that I'm part of. So it's on a whole bunch of different categories, but there's definitely the fitness one, eating right. So eating a good, healthy meal for the whole day. Making sure that I do some sort of form of sales work, that I do work on my 90-day plans for my business. So it covers a whole bunch of areas.
Okay, so both business and personal. I like it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then I do other spiritual things. So whether it's read scripture or pray, and then meditation is another key one. And I've definitely tracked it. In terms of the habits that I've grown, because I don't get 100% of those done every single day. But the ones that I just cannot get by without is my physical fitness one, that I've got to do some sort of activity every day, and meditation as well. Now, if I don't get a meditation in, and it can only be 15, 20 minutes. But if I don't do that, I really find that I'm not my best mentally for the whole day. And usually sort of crashes around about that 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, why am I sort of a bit sketchy at this point in time? Why aren't I focused? And it's because I didn't meditate all those hours before in the morning.
Yeah, right. And you also said, it's a mandatory for you. So it's mandatory, but it's also a personal responsibility, right? Because there's a certain outcome if you don't. I mean, there's an outcome in either case, but one is good and one is bad, right? And if you got family, if you got kids, if you want to be around for a while, then it is a personal responsibility to look after that shell that we live in, our body, right? To keep it challenged, to keep it maintained with a certain physical fitness.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the only one we've got. So, I've never really come across anyone that said, "Yeah, no, I don't want to be more active. I don't want to have, I don't want to." I'm quite happy not being able to walk up a flight of stairs, or I'm quite happy being overweight. Isn't it? It's funny. It's just those people, for some reason, they can't connect that I need to do something every single day, or I need to do regular exercise or movement or something in order to get the result. If I could have a magic pill, that would be awesome. But
Yeah,
it comes down to that personal responsibility for sure.
which is, and then that's easy for you and myself to say because we've all been active in our life. But I do have to say that people that I've come across that have never exercised, it's definitely not the first thing on their mind to the want to be more active. It typically comes from like the desire to feel healthier, less heavy. So typically people come to fitness professional. The typical answer is, what do you want? What's your goal? They say, I wouldn't mind a bit of six pack or lose a bit of weight.
Yep.
But it's not strong enough. It's not strong enough. Why?
Yep.
And they typically don't last in the program for very long. And that's why, I'm a big believer that you need to have a really strong why. Like in a business, you need to have a strong why in your personal well-being, and ask yourself, well, okay, well, I want to achieve a bit of six pack, I want to lose a bit of weight, but why? What is behind that? Well, the reason why is maybe that if you do lose a bit of weight, then you will feel more confident about things that you can do. And okay, good. So now you've got a bit, you've peeled the onion a little bit. But I typically recommend going maybe like 4 levels down and ask yourself again. Okay, well, if you could feel more confident as a result of losing a bit of weight, what would that allow you to do? Well, if you feel more confident, you might be now looking at things to self-actualize yourself even further, whether it's in your hobbies or your career, right? And then you can keep on digging, you know what I mean? But ultimately, this is applicable to anybody that wants to make a big shift in their well-being, in their lifestyle, and make it for a more a healthier one. Is to
Yeah.
truly dig in and find out why, because that is what's going to help you on that journey of building those habits.
I couldn't agree more. And for some reason, this has only been something that sort of relatively lately come to the fore in terms of this. Your why is so important. I know Simon Sinek's got a great book on that.
Mm.
But also, I think from the fitness perspective, and that we see Navy SEALs type of guys that are talking about that. And one thing that was because it was probably introduced to me through Wake Up Warrior a few years ago, that you really needed to have this incredibly strong why. And I guess the reason that you need to have that strong why is because life is always going to take twists and turns that you don't understand and that you weren't expecting. I don't think any of us were expecting the sort of shutdown coronavirus that sort of hit. And from a business perspective, if I didn't have that very, very strong passion and belief of what I'm trying to achieve for business owners here in Australia, and New Zealand, but also for my team in the Philippines, if I didn't have that really strong, engaging thing, there's a number of times where I just think, it's all too hard, I'm going to give up. And that's certainly true with our physical fitness, isn't it? So if you don't have that very, very strong why, when things go wrong, when you get injured, that's always been my scenario. It's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to run this race, or I'm going to get fitter, and then for some reason you get an injury that you didn't see coming, and it's all like, oh, okay, it was all too hard. But if you go back to your why, then you can always pick it back up again and go with it. That just helps you be more resilient, I think.
Oh, absolutely, and helps you those times when the motivation is not there.
Yeah.
And any other things that you like doing in terms of physical activity? I saw you're snowboarding.
Yeah, love snowboarding. So I was always a skier when I grew up. Mum and Dad took me. I was one of those lucky kids that got to do ski school every year for a long time. And then I sort of had a bit of a gap. So I would call myself a competent skier. And then about 10, 11 years ago, when my kids were getting old enough to go to the snow, I thought I'd try a snowboard. There's something a little bit different. And wow, that blew my mind. I was never a passionate skier, but I'm certainly a passionate snowboarder. I just love it. And I was so lucky to, a couple of years ago, I went to New Zealand on, it was in the September school holidays. And so very late winterish type of conditions in Queenstown. And I thought I just sold my accounting practice, so I thought I'll give it a heli boarding a go. So I just went down there and booked in, and it turned out there was an absolute late season dump of snow, and it was Red Bull type of experience. It was the helicopter up on the very edge of mountains with cliffs on one side and incredibly steep powder snow in front of us. It was the most terrifying thing I did, but it was just the most amazing day.
That sounds incredible. Yeah,
I wasn't fit.
It sounds incredible. It's like one of those extreme sports videos.
It was. I was saying to the guy, there was a couple, when we were going up in the helicopter to the first run, which was amazing. The scenery was beautiful, and he was looking a bit nervous, and I was a bit nervous. And I said, "Don't worry, mate. It's not going to be like Red Bull. It's not going to be like where that helicopter sort of just lands with one skid in the air and you sort of jump out and then the helicopter disappears and you're up the top of a very steep mountain." That's exactly what happened. Exactly. He was looking at me going, "This could be a Red Bull video." I'm like, "I know."
And so you were there alone, and then and how did you know which way you go? Because I mean, was there a path?
No, there's a guide. So there's a guide. There was a small group of us. There was 5 of us in our group, including the guide.
Yeah, right.
So he would go down for a few hundred meters, probably about 400 meters, because they were quite a few kilometers long each run. And you just had to stay in the general vicinity of where he went so that you didn't fall into any crevasses, because it's really mountains and avalanche risk and all sorts of, it's extreme. But extremely fast and extremely on the edge. But gee, wow, I am a bit of an adrenaline junkie. That was one day to remember, that's for sure.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't expect those conditions again. I think that was almost because it was just such a fresh dump of snow, and there was not one cloud in the sky. It was blue skies, not one breath of wind. It was just unbelievably amazing. But I would definitely do it again. Yeah.
And the good thing about these type of experiences, they give you a new perspective on things, right? Is there any like aha moment for you once you've done that, once you've finished that big slope, gone down that mountain, that you thought for yourself, wow, this was incredible, and I'm gonna approach certain things differently now?
Yeah, that's exactly right, and it's certainly what I get out of doing things like, whether it's I've been a skydiver, things that I'll push myself outside my comfort zone. The enemy for me is comfort zone, because it has so much application across all areas of your life. You just think, I'm a different person now. I've done that. I've survived that first run. When we got to the bottom of that, I thought, wow, I'm a different snowboarder now. I've leveled up. And certainly at the end of that day, I'm like, okay, now I feel much more confident about being, the sort of snowboarding that I can do. But not only that, I feel so much more confident that I can do things that are, quite terrifying to me and come out the other end. So I think it's a very important life experience when you push yourself outside your comfort zone.
And stories like yours and like many other people that I've listened to, just seems to confirm this over and over, is that really the magic happens outside of that circle of that comfort. We really got to get outside of the comfort zone every now and then and push the
Yeah.
boundaries, push that envelope, because it, yeah, like you said, it just opens up your eyes, widens up the horizon of the opportunities and the confidence to do so.
Yeah, I find it was certainly as an entrepreneur, as someone who's building this business, and I don't expect it to be my last business. I'm certainly got plans for other businesses as well to be run. But to give you that sort of confidence, you need to have the ability to get outside of your comfort zone and relish that experience and understand that that's going to make you a bigger, better person in the end of the day. I think as you get a bit older, as I am now, the opportunities maybe to get outside your comfort zone from a physical perspective are less than they were, or you have to fight harder to do them. So maybe I've done too many things and I need to.
Yeah, and it's certainly a good example now when we're all sort of still dealing with some level of isolation with COVID-19, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
What's the hardest thing you've had to deal with in the current lockdown?
All right, so this sort of the isolation for me is and the lack of travel. I guess I'm an active person, so I like to. I travel to the Philippines quite a lot. Travel to the US quite a bit as well, and I've always and to Sydney and to other states of Australia for business and leisure activities as well. But I do like to travel a lot. It's so being in isolation and not being able to travel was a big hit to me. Um, and then at the same time, I've recently separated from my wife, and I'm now in an apartment all by myself. So I don't even have the family that I'm used to having around me. So it was a deep isolation that sort of hit all at the same time. It's been quite a challenge. So it's good to see that things are starting to open up again.
Mm. Wow, yeah, no, it must be a tough one with that split now with a partner. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now we are at the end of the episode. Any words of advice you'd like to give somebody out there listening who is looking to start or is currently running a business that could probably do better?
Um, yeah, I think if we take this sort of back to where we were trending the conversation, to really have that vision and that understanding of what you want to achieve out of the business. And if you're at a lifestyle business, I understand that you might not have that great big plan to grow and to do whatever you need to do. But for those people that really want to make a difference in the world, to add value, that if they can really just look 3 to 5 years in the future and say, well, this is what I want to do, because that will then help you work out the steps that you need to do right now. I first heard from Tony Robbins and heard from many other people since that, as people, we always overestimate what we can achieve in a year, but we massively underestimate what we can achieve in a decade. So I think having that longer term vision for your business is really, really important. And then just look at the things that you need to put in place, whether it's habits, whether it's assistance in things like bookkeeping, because you need to make sure that your accounts are always right, because you need to see that you're trending in the right direction. Whether it's getting a valuation of your business now so that you can see that all the things that you're doing are having a positive impact. Knowing where you're going is the key thing, though, I'd say, Vic.
Mm. And making sure that throughout that journey, you also invest in your own self for that physical performance, because without that, you won't be able to achieve none of the business side of things properly.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just not going. It's not going to sustain you. So,
yep.
Well, you know what? You just don't want to end up that diabetic with cancer or with other really chronic health conditions that runs a successful business but has no family, no spiritual connection, and really no health. So, so you got money, you see those guys, they look unhappy. And that's not what I want for my life. And I wouldn't want it for anyone's life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's some really good tools about it as well. I mean, for example, as a bit of a shameless plug, when we at VitFit, at my fitness business, we do provide, an exercise programs for individuals. They can access from anywhere, and the big component of our program is habit-based coaching. So we can help you, whether it's uh, increasing your hydration levels, starting to drink more water, or whatever habit. It's all based on personal consultation, but something that we provide at our business. Now, this is probably the first time I'm plugging this in on this episode, but it was about a time. I mean, with the messages, the key message here being fit and healthy and active, you need to have a vehicle to do that. You need some helping hand at the start when you don't know how, and why not plug something that I've been passionate about doing the last 10 years and doing successfully. So now there's a bit of a shameless plug from me, but Scott,
I don't think it's a shameless plug, and I think there's overall it comes down to this: there's tons of information out there on the internet. People have got it in their phone. They've got 100% access and connectivity to the information they need to do the fitness programs, to change their lifestyle, to develop those habits. But at the end of the day, people don't, and they don't know what's right for them. And the internet isn't tailored to you. So coming to someone like yourself to get that unique program, absolutely the best way to go. And I'd say the same way with us in terms of, you can do your own bookkeeping. There's no dramas with that. If you're a small business, small or medium-sized business, yeah, do your own bookkeeping, sure. But really, if you can engage an expert to help you along the way, then your life just becomes so much more focused and easier to deal with.
Mm. Yeah, no, you put it well. Thanks for that. And on that note, is there anything that you'd like to offer to the listeners that could help them? Did you get a specific offer or anything like that?
Absolutely. There's I've written a book, and it's in e-version at the moment, but we're just putting the final touches on the physical copy. But I'm certainly offering any listeners to your podcast, they can have access to that book. It's called Unfunk Your Business Finances. So if you're a business owner that doesn't quite understand the terminology of accounting, doesn't quite understand the key reports that the accounting systems generate and what they mean for you, doesn't quite understand the relationship between different numbers, and we talked about margin and overheads and break-even points, or really doesn't understand or needs a better grip on what they're doing the business for, how they how businesses get valued, and what they could get at the end of the day, then I've written this book for those people. So it's a very easy read, or I like to think it's a very easy read. It's full of a nice little story that goes along with it. And it's called, Unfunk Your Business Finances, and everyone's welcome to a copy.
No, that's excellent. And what I like about that, like you said, you're using the power of stories to share a certain, pass on a certain knowledge. Because I think stories are so effective when you combine, an information with a story. And also, understanding numbers, it's critical in any business. Every business owner needs to understand their numbers, because otherwise you can't make those decisions correctly.
Well, if we put this in fitness terminology, I'd be almost saying, you do measurements. I mean, we don't necessarily like the scales as the sole measurement for your fitness, but you've certainly got your weight, and you've got your height, and you've got the body measurements that you do to see that you're tracking your progress. And accounting records are exactly the same thing. Those accounting reports, they track your business's fitness, if you like, so that you can have your business the best that it needs to be.
I'm trying to think of a good punchline that covers both now.
It does.
But yeah, that's perfect example. Yeah. So let me try. Anybody listening out there, you gotta know your numbers, whether it's your business or your personal fitness. You've got to know your numbers, and you've got to know your numbers in order to know where you're going, and knowing that you're doing it successfully.
Absolutely. Couldn't said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, Scott, it's been a pleasure to having you on the show, and I look forward to obviously catch up again, because there's a lot more questions that I've gotten in regards to finances and accounting, and so we can maybe even look at maybe doing another episode. We'll see what the listeners say. But to me, it's been a valuable episode of great advice, applicable to both business and personal. And sharing those stories, both yourself, myself, I think it's ultimately what helps inspire the listeners of this show. And on that note, it was great to have you on the show. And is there any questions that you think I should have asked that I didn't?
Probably no. I think we covered a very broad range. I think we did well.
Excellent. Well, Scott, what's your plan for the rest of the day?
Cleaning the house and shopping would be the main things that I need to do.
Okay. And when you clean your house, is it like a form of meditation for you?
We've got another half an hour. To me, it's the same as making your bed and cleaning the kitchen. It's a form of control, so that you can control your environment in so little ways, especially with what's happening with Corona and so many things that come at you. If you can take the things that you can control, so cleaning is definitely a form of meditation for me, because it's something that I can control. I can my own environment. So it's not, I'm not a neat freak or a clean freak. It's just that it just helps, like meditation.
And you could you take killing two birds with one stone.
Exactly.
The act of cleaning, I mean, it's a simple task. You don't have to think. You just focus on, I don't know, vacuuming or whatever it is, right? And it's the same thing goes for regular meditation. You're just focusing on the breathing, which gets you declutter your brain. So that's cool.
Absolutely, mate.
All right, well, let's finish on that note then. It was great having you on the show, Scott. And you have a great rest of your weekend, mate. And I look forward to catching up on the flip side.
Thank you, Vid. It's been my absolute pleasure.